Hello and welcome to the final episode of the GA Plus Analysis Show. To coin or to use or borrow someone else's phrase, Sheamus, what do you think of that?
It was equal parts impressive and disappointing, right? So it was, we got a performance today, right? It was just from the team that nobody expected the performance, and that's the thing that I took out of this was how incredibly impressive this Tipperary group are and their journey. And I said it before the game that Tipp were the most steadily improving team in the whole championship, right? I did not think they were going to win it. But I thought that they were the team through the Munster round robin, through the All-Ireland series, that were steadily improving and showed real grit in game-deciding situations in Ennis against Clare, in Croke Park against Kilkenny with 14 men. They were the ones that, the leaders to me in that team just separated themselves from the ordinary, right? And as good as their hurling is, and Tipperary, they scored goals. They scored goals against Kilkenny. As good as their hurling is, it was absolutely, to me, it was a character game. It was a character defining game for Tipperary. Different to how they won it in 19. Different to how they won it in 16. So for me, it was very, very impressive from them. And a credit to their team, a credit to the unity of the group, the buy-in, the alignment, everything for me was spot on. I'm not buying into the other side of it, because all you can do is play what's in front of you. And by God, today they put on a show, Tipperary in the second 35 minutes, because you can have purple patch and let up. There was no let up from Tip, none, not a bit.
To be fair though, we saw kind of glimpses of that, particularly in the latter kind of 10-15 minutes of the Kilkenny game. And I actually think that was the foundation for their success. Like, they weren't hurling particularly well against Kilkenny, but the last kind of 15 minutes or whatever it was, and Darren McCarthy was sent off, like, for me, it was that kind of 10-15 minutes that actually won him the All-Ireland, because psychologically, that was a massive boost.
Yeah, no, because it was the same for us in 18. Was we had come through trial by fire, right? We come through a 1-point game against Kilkenny in Thurles in an All-Ireland quarter-final, and against Cork, being 6 points down with 5 minutes to play in normal time.
It's a trend, is it?
Ask Owen Cadigan about it, right? He had nightmares about it. So like that 6 points down with 5 minutes to go, that basically we got it extra time, we won extra time, and it was just the belief fuel. Every team needs a belief fuel. Like, it's hard to replicate the crunch at the end of a game when the game is in the mental pot and someone has to grab it, because unless you give the leaders the opportunities, they don't become the leaders they can be. And that, to me, that you're right that the semi-final was a key one for them. But again, the Munster round robin, they came through third. Limerick and Cork had separated themselves from the pack. But even that first round against Limerick, it was a statement game for Tipperary. They weren't the better hurling team on the day, but they were the better work rate. They were the better execution on the day. They were the better physically on the day, which is something to say against a Limerick team. And that, to me, that's all belief fuel. That's all stuff saying that, what we say in the group is actually translating to performances, because results can be misleading. How many points you score in a day can be misleading, because you can convert 70% of your scoring chances, or you can convert 50% of your scoring chances and still win. So it's performance is what you review when you sit back down during the week and you review it. So that's the kind of stuff that Tipper able to layer on and build that belief week on week.
The obvious other question here is, and I don't even know where the starting point is, like, where did Cork go from here?
Right. So, if you're going to talk about the impressive game, you have to talk about the collapse. Yeah, and it's, to me, this is going to be bitterly hard for the team, for the players, because unfortunately, right, and the reality is that your performance is what you're judged by, right? But they're going to be eviscerated by an unforgiving Cork public, the same Cork public that carried them on their shoulders in the week leading up to it. And there was such a huge demand. I've never seen a ticket demand like there was this year for the All-Ireland final. And the red that was in Croker for it. Like, so Cork people wanted to be there for the history that they expected. And unfortunately, like the second half, the goal before half time probably was the worst thing that could have happened to them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
A tight game could have focused mine and could have given Pat Ryan a reason to demand more intensity and demand more physicality in the middle of the field where they weren't doing well. It was only down the channels and down the lines that they were actually doing well and succeeding, getting scores. They got four points from frees from Hoggy, and the Barrett goal to me it was misleading in the game. Tipp had their 9 wides in the first half.
Terrible wides.
Just again, poor decisions, and we'll talk to it later. Like Liam Cahill, the difference between me at halftime, one team was able to recognize the performance elements that were going for them and really focus in on what they needed to do in the second half, and the other team wasn't able to correct what they were doing wrong because in the second half they kept doing the same thing. And for me, for Cork, they kept attacking the centre with the sweep, and it just. Again, it's very hard to deviate from what you know, but when it's not working, someone has to call it.
It's kind of like that. It's the old Cork tradition of you score 330, we'll score 440 kind of attitude. And look, this is kind of one of those decisions you make. It's kind of a double-edged sword when you're following teams and you're following players all over the pitch. When they do something different, it can be incredibly challenging, and that's really what Cork is.
Responding in the game, responding to something that's unexpected, like that has to come from the people on the field. But like, there's no maybe for me that the presence of the sweeper needed to change subtly, at least what Cork were doing, and the success that they had out wide. I don't think that was flagged enough. And I think they made Ronan Maher man of the match by putting the ball down on top of him in the second half, and some of his grabs again were incredible, like over Brian Hayes. But I feel like they made him man of the match by an insistence on going that way. And that,
but even tactically though, Sheamus, like they completely schooled Cork. Let's be perfectly honest about it, in every kind of fashion. Like they got their matchups right. They dragged Darragh Fitzgibbon all over. Like I've never seen like Darragh Fitzgibbon on less ball in a match. Like normally he sat very close to Rob for the vast majority of the Munster campaign and all the way through. He couldn't get close to him because he was getting dragged over this.
But what did they do different, right? So to me, fundamentally, Tipp, the only thing that they did different was play Brian, the half-back line, right, and pull Willie back to wing back. Fundamentally, that was the main thing. All year, Morris, Ormond, and Sam O'Farrell or Tynan, whoever was there on the wing, were playing on their 65. They were playing deep, leaving space, and the half-forward line were doing the damage by turning over ball and then running at the teams. It's like we've seen it. We saw it against Waterford in thirds, and like we highlighted it. Myself and yourself, we were talking about that ability to turn ball over midfield and then attack that space in behind. And like it was the Tipp half forward line that absolutely crippled Cork in the beginning of the second half. So I would say you're right. So tactically, Tipperary nailed them.
But even putting like Willie Connors, for me, Willie Connors was man of the match. I know Ronan Maher got man of the match. I thought he was absolutely incredible. And we'll probably talk this towards the end of the show. But for me, I thought he was one of the best players in the country this year.
Yeah, well, like he given his opportunity, and I think again, himself during the league, himself and Craig Morgan were midfield, and I couldn't understand why they changed the combo as the year went on, because to me it was probably the form combination in the middle of the field for the vast majority of the year, and even into the Munster round robin. So Willie has kind of been a victim of, if in doubt, he's normally one of the first people changed over the last couple of years. Whereas I think, no, he's actually really firmed up. It's hilarious. Do you know what really helped Willie Connors was that preliminary quarter final?
Against Laois. He got man of the match.
Scoring 5 points from play in the first half. That really helped that really helped Willie Connors solidify his play. So these are it's funny how the story of the year changes as it goes along. But again, a masterclass from the middle of the field from Tipperary, and that's not even mentioning John McGrath and the opportunism that he was able to take advantage of. Like the third goal, I hope the third goal doesn't get lost in the mix of all this. His ability to knock a ball in flight. We can talk about Patrick Collins needing to come earlier and be brave, but like, how many goals do you see scored like that in an All-Ireland final? And if you count Jason Ford, who was in the square, that's 2 in the one game. So it's just that's the day that Tipperary had. They were dominant. They were dominant in just so many areas. It was hard to believe.
But it's and I'm going to get into it in a second. I just find it very strange how tactically Cork were just so unprepared for a sweeper. And a sweeper that stood on one side of the pitch, because 2 years ago we spoke that Cork absolutely schooled Limerick from Puckouts, where they overloaded on Diarmaid Byrne's side. And ever since that, they seem to be working it quite a lot. And we've seen it, we'll show clips in a minute, we've seen it all year where they like to see a lot of their players go to one side of the pitch. If they're playing with 2 inside, the likes of Hoggy and Collins stay inside on, we'll say, the right-hand side and stay there a lot to let one side open. But sure, the obvious thing then was get runners down the middle. So what did they do? They put the sweeper and just left them there. I just couldn't understand how for even like 30 minutes you wouldn't change it up in some fashion, because it was that obvious.
Because even if you look at all the successful teams, even Tipperary on Sunday, where Reece Shelley has a bomb, but he wasn't using the bomb all the time. He wasn't putting it down the throat of the Cork defence all the time, even though he could, because he's a cannon of a puckout. He was finding Morris and Ormond to the line in space, and they varied it up very, very well. Now, it's funny, Tipp only had 19 of their own puckouts because Cork only had 19 shots go dead. So like that'll tell you how few shots they were able to take in the whole game. But it just showed that every team is nuanced, and every team isn't over reliant on one. Or every successful team isn't over reliant on one approach. But I feel like what in some senses the success in the semi-final did probably factor into the fact that, okay, we do this really well, and we're going to stick to this for Cork, and I think that was probably they needed to use Barrett more when he was actually effective. Back to what he did against Clare last year, even breaking out of the centre position and getting onto the wing, trying with John Conlon trailing him. So there was options. There was options for Cork. It's just they didn't use them.
Yeah, so let's start with that one, because the sweeper, we've been talking about the sweeper, the first team to ever win in Ireland with a sweeper. Let's throw it out there. I'd say
Clare 2013. Get out of it, man.
Not as straightforward.
Well, Davy Fitz like trademarked sweeper in 2013.
I think I just read a few things there recently about it, and there's quite a good few Cork players not overly impressed with the sweeper. So let's go. Anyway, let's not get stuck into those conversations. But I was just writing down some stuff, and my first point was the sweeper and roll. So last year, what we've seen teams come with sweepers for some of them very good and valid reasons, and we've seen kind of your very offensive sweeper, which sits nearly on a 21 in the middle. We saw it against, actually, when Tipp were playing Laois up in Laois, on Port Laois, they did it a lot, where they literally had the extra man sitting on the 21 in the middle. Last year we also saw some teams where actually Waterford did it quite a lot, where they had someone like Dara Lyons sitting in front of a Tadhg de Burke, sitting in front of him, not behind him. So it's offensive, where if Tadhg wins the ball, he's in front and he's playing through the lines there. But in this instance, what they done with O'Mara was actually very smart, because they knew that Cork were going to overload on one side. So what they ended up doing was they left all the bodies going to one side, and whatever side the bodies were at, they had Brian O'Mara go to the other side. So that's the first thing. So my first point is based on that. The second point then is, when Brian O'Mara knew the ball was going to come long, his role then subsequently led to him going from wing back directly in behind Ronan O'Mara to make sure they didn't get run on goal. And the final point is kind of an explanation from what and why they did. In other words, in the past, I have a couple of clips on Cork on that space that's created on one side, and why it was the right thing, obviously, for Tipp to play with that sweeper on one side. So even though it's a sweeper, it's 3 separate points. So the first point we'll look at, right? The first point here is primarily based on the body. So he stood again on one side of the pitch. So he's actually standing on the same side here that we can see. Okay, that's Darren McCarthy, because he's come out to wing forward. Sam O'Farrell has gone obviously to midfield, and Brian has gone back as your sweeper. All right.
Yeah.
As a result of that, when Rob gets the ball, he takes 3 seconds. So I actually looked at it. He takes 3 seconds to hit the ball, right? Which allows then Brian O'Mara get into position. We can't see the Cork players here, really. The reason we can't see them is because they're overloading on the other side. Because Darren McCarthy's position, which was obviously very close in front to Rob, he can't angle his ball across. So he has to go down the same line that the sweeper is on. Okay, so clearly defined decision by Tipp to make sure that one side of the field is covered at all times. Okay, we'll see it here again. Getting out with the ball, Rob again did really, really well in the first half in particular. As we can see, when the ball goes bang, we've seen Dara Fitzgibbon do this several occasions, not just this year. Generally, he gets the ball and he's running straight down the channel, straight towards goal. He can't do it, obviously, because he sees that the sweeper's there. And we can also see we have your 2 full forwards, i.e. you have Connolly, and we also have Hoggy on one side. And that is primarily to do this. In other words, you take Brian O'Mara there, it's potentially a goal opportunity, or it's an easy score where you see Hoggy often looping around the back and the pop if they can't get the ball on. Okay, so in fairness to Tipp, they had incredible homework done, and Brian O'Mara played an absolute blinder when it came to this role. So he stopped the likes of Dara Fitzgibbon running straight down the throat to the goal. Again, we'll look at it here again. They go short. They're looking for passes. You have O'Leary here looking for someone head up. And when the ball gets played in, watch here. Here we have him coming from the other side. Okay, his position is I'm holding the space because most people are over on this side. When he gets back, he's trying to get in and cover Ronan Marr. Okay, so again, Hoggy up. I think actually this one was wide, but look at the position that Brian O'Mara is coming from. So he's coming from wing position, running in when he knows the ball has gone in there to make sure to just cover inside. Okay, and that was really, really important, because if they got a run on them like they did against Dublin, like Cork did against Dublin, they were under a small bit of pressure. Again, ball goes here again to Rob. He got a load of sharp puckouts. They were happy enough for him to get puckouts. He can't go down that line. Why can't he go down that line? He can't go down that line because they have a spare man down there. Okay, now we can see that Brian O'Mara is, after seeing this, he realizes that the 3 full forwards are over on one side of the pitch. So what he does is go over and hold position. The key thing here is that he actually doesn't get sucked. And I'd say that was a fundamental part of his role, was actually not to engage and play, because they don't want him in that position. So when the ball is played across, we can see here Tipp have the bodies back. Brian O'Mara is still in that position. That's actually Morgan. And then all of a sudden, then they can play the ball up the field. Okay, so they knew exactly what they were doing, not to get sucked in towards where it's a very easy pop pass, because they've obviously watched a lot of games on what Cork have done over the last number of years, and they're really, really good at it. Okay, so again, Collins goes down the pitch. We have seen this against Dublin, where Connolly got the ball and he flicked over the head. Do you remember that? Where Tim O'Mahony got the ball over in a second, where he got the ball. Tim, they obviously vacate. There's all the Cork players on one side of the pitch. They vacated, leave Tim go over the top and get a score. But obviously Brian O'Mara is there, and that was basically what his job was to do, not to hit the ball wide, but to cover that space so they don't let the O'Mahony, Fitzgibbon. They've got incredible success over the last number of years in doing that. And the goal, as I said, we missed the puck out for the Dublin match, and I'll show it in a second. But when the ball is played over the top, he was running down the channel, he popped it in, and Connolly just flicked it over the head. So the sweeper was a very different type of sweeper than what we've seen.
What I was going to say, yeah.
But it has the very essence.
Yeah, it was tailored. Like, it was tailored to Cork. That's what it was. That's what was so impressive about. So it wasn't a stay in the center kind of role. It was absolutely, as you said, it would allow the defenders to defend knowing that that side of the field is covered. And you know as well as I do that if you're marking space in the center of the goal out to the line, it is so much easier than marking the space from the center of the field both sides. It is so difficult to have both directions to cover. And when you just
go tight, though, Seamus.
limit the options, it's unreal.
It really does. It allows you to go tight on the person American, because you're always mindful of the fact of the goal, that you don't want to concede a goal. That's always in your psyche, regardless. And if you know that there's someone on that side of the pitch, it's much easier to go touch tight with them. So,
and it's the reason that the tackle count was as high as it was too, because they were all touch tight because of the redundancy.
And not, even though like his primary role was to mark space, and Cork love running to space. We've seen this since the early 2000s, that Cork's game was all about running space. His second and just as important role, Brian O'Mara, as a sweeper, was to get back the pitch. So even though he was to hold space in the half-back line, his next thing was, when it came from puckouts or it came from long ball, as you said, Sheamus, before we started this, Tipp were happy enough for him to go short. Tipp were happy enough for Cork to go short, so either Connolly went long or they went short to someone like an O'Leary or a Sean O'Donoghue, but the second ball then was long. So when Brian O'Mara realised the ball was going long, his role then was to get back behind. So he has come from this position because it's been a 1-2 with Collins back to Sean, and when he knows the ball is coming long, he's gone from half back in behind to Ronan Maher to make sure that there's no one getting in a goal. And that's what he did so well. Even though he wasn't called upon a lot, we can see his positional sense here is incredible. He doesn't engage in play, and that's really important. So even though that Hayes wins this ball, he doesn't really care where it is. If it's out the pitch, he's really happy with it. And when the ball comes in, it's actually, you'll probably see it better from the backward camera, but when the ball is turned over, you can actually see here that he's running across into that position. The ball goes in, again, poor enough wide. Again, ball goes long. He knows the ball is going long, because when Collins lines up like this, he knows the ball is going long. You won't see him here, because why? He's back in that position that if the ball is turned over, Healy, here he is, coming across, making sure that he's in that position, that he's actually the one to engage with the Cork player that's running on goal. Because again, it's very easy to take a step inside. We can watch him here, getting across. He's making sure that he's the person that he's going to be facing, and he has to hit the ball over the bar. So his position was to hold in the half-back line in general play, but when the ball was going long, he was bolting back to make sure that he was covered.
And it's funny, like the concept is so simple, right? And we've spoken about it before in different games, but the concept is simple. It's our six backs are going to mark the six forwards, our midfield are going to mark midfield. And we're just going to exactly eliminate the threat of the three-pointer against a team whose goal prowess is basically the number one. It scares pretty much most teams they play. It scared Limerick, because Limerick had to adapt how they defended them because of the goal glut that Cork got against them last year. So the concept is simple. And then on the far side, if we think about even Dublin against Limerick, right? 5 forwards can beat 6 backs if you play the ball the right way, and you don't lob ball in on top of a numbers disadvantage. You play it strategically, and you attack from deep where you've got the numbers advantage, or you attack wide where you've got the players who can move into the space. So the concept is simple, but the execution is hard. But like you said about O'Mara, to me it was a good example of a really well defined role and the player to do it.
And just to kind of wrap this point up, even though it's still the first point, even though there's 3 small points in it. The reason why, so we know now what Brian O'Mara's role was as a sweeper in play and when the ball is going long. Why was it? So the question there was like, why did they decide to go to sweeper? So I have a couple of clips here from games during the year of why they went with the sweeper. Okay, so again, this is Collins. We can see here that this is the ball. This is one of the clips we showed last week or before last. This is what Cork like to do. They like to get space on one side. So Brian O'Mara was essentially holding one of those sides, which allows, as we said, you as a cornerback or a fullback to go tight on the other side. If the ball breaks in like this, who's there? It's Brian O'Mara. So he's there covering that space. And as we can see on the other side, that's the overload that we look at that Cork always do. They hold 2 fellas inside, but if O'Mara is there, That's not happening because he's the person that's under that and actually holding that space. So you don't even go down that side. And Brian Hayes doesn't flick the ball down into that space because he knows there's an extra body there. Again, this was the one that I showed you. So remember where Brian O'Mara cut the puck out? This is the one I'm on about. So this came from a puck from Collins, and this is a great goal again by Connolly. So they knew exactly what they were going to do. They knew that they used this puck quite a lot, and they wanted to try and make sure that it didn't happen to him. And often you'd see Darragh Fitzgibbon in that position. Here's another one here where the ball is played around between Joyce, Rob, Coleman, and what they do is they get the ball in. Here we can see, right, this is the space that they've tried to get it into. Now, in this case, it's actually still Brian, but his role at this stage was actually to mark. It wasn't actually stay as a sweeper. Now, bear in mind the fact that this was when Darren McCarthy was sent off, and obviously it's incredibly difficult to play a sweeper when you're already down an extra body. So he's actually too far away to try and get the cover. And as a result of that, we can see what happened. So even Tim O'Mahony, who was close to the referee, this is what they like to do. They like to win the ball and make that dart and run down the middle. So when he wins the ball, he sees the run. And again, Tim is straight down the throat of the Tipperary defence and bang goal. So that is the essence of why they actually played with the sweeper, because they realised that Cork like to drag you in the field, hit the ball over the top, or overload on one side and play the ball down the other side in the hope that they can win the ball and then get a run. So an absolute masterclass of playing the sweeper in a very different way.
From a fella who's averse to playing it, like, so Liam Cahill went on record, and probably deliberate misinformation. So people were basically saying how we're going to cope with the Cork goal threat, and they said, oh, just Liam Cahill, he's the kind of fella who might play a sweeper, and he was, he came out as if to say, I've never played a sweeper in my life, that's never happened. Obviously, it's throwing people off the scent, but it was. You don't do it a lot of the time, and people, whether they like it or they don't like it, it's a tool. Like, you use the tool if you think it'll do the job. If you don't think it'll do the job, you don't need it. Well, then it stays in the toolbox. But to basically at that late in the year with a 2-week run up, to put the touches to it that they did, means that they had to decide to do it. They had to put the plan in, and then they had to practice it. They had to do it over and over again in training, so that at least the muscle memory would be there, that we all know whose job is whose.
Exactly. Absolutely. You're going to show us some of your clips now, are you?
So it kind of builds off what you were saying, right? So, and it builds off what I was saying at the beginning, is so far as Cork needed to keep to me, when I see a sweeper, you needed to keep away from the centre. I just put together a few clips, right? So Cork only had, they didn't have a huge success on their own puckout, compared to Tipperary. Tipperary were 75% of their own puckouts they won, but Cork again were guilty of. You showed some of them, and showed some of the kind of concept. This whole down the middle. Here is where Tipp again had done their homework, right? And Limerick had this done.
I'd say they were watching our analysis show, Sheamus. I said they were watching.
Yeah. It's this, but it's you. Remember, it's the pinning of the left arm. Ronan Maher's left arm is over his left shoulder. Hayes can't get his hurley up to break the ball the way he wants to, like we saw in the Dublin clip. And when you run it on, then the ball does not break where Cork typically expect it to break, and so you've got Cork players that run past the break. And it means that the Tipp players, who are the three boys in front, Willie Connors is one of them, Craig Morgan's the other, they're well placed, Stakelum's in, and the ball's away. In most cases. This is a messy version, but the ball is out and Morris is gone. Here we go, straight down the middle, or down on top of the numbers again. But look, it's just Ronan Maher, instead of letting Brian Hayes dictate the terms of engagement here, I'm going to get to the front, and it's Ronan Hayes or Ronan Maher that breaks the ball here, and it's Ronan Maher that breaks it to the Tipp advantage and not Cork. So it was crucial that Brian Hayes didn't dictate the terms on those balls. Here we have Christopher Joyce on the wing, and look at the space in front of Joyce. Right, he had all that space to run into and deliver an accurate ball to forwards. They were so reliant then on the long ball. And this was your man of the match. Like, so for me, they really did. They played to Ronan Maher's strengths. It's like plonking ball down top of Hugh Lawler, or plonking ball maybe on top of Kyle Hayes, which teams were allergic to do. So for me, when they got it short, then they needed an option. They needed Downey to go back into the centre to give O'Leary an option and to go short, but there's actually no interest there. There's no interest in working the ball through the lines. It's long, it's direct. And O'Mara, again, then is in the right position to break the ball, tip advantage, O'Farrell down the field. And this turns into a score now. Bit of a mess here where he loses control, but who saves him? Only Morris. But there was no appetite from Downey to move into that space to free him, to send him up the field. And that's what when you've got an extra man in defence, that to me is.
You have to play the lines, though. You have to play the lines. You have to get the ball to midfield.
So play the channels or work it through the lines. That's the numbers advantage. You're literally playing into their numbers advantage by doing that. And I was so surprised how many times they did it. And we were talking at the beginning about needing a change of tack. They've been able to do it in the past. That clip from the Tipperary game below Hurlers that you showed, they had the extra man against Tipperary in that 14 versus 15 scenario, and Cork did really well playing that around the backs. I remember we talked about Collins taking the ball off the full backs of the 1-2, and then instead of hitting it long and on top of Hayes, he picked out Harnedy in space. And he was able to do all this. So they're able to do it, and that's what surprised me so much, is that they had the bodies, they had Barrett, who was playing well, they had Fitz, they had the boys. I couldn't.
I kind of struggled though.
I couldn't.
When the sweeper came in, whatever, 10 plus years ago at this stage, the obvious thing for most teams to do is to mark the sweeper, because the sweeper is put there because they're a good hurler and generally they play the ball.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I was kind of saying to myself, would Connolly or someone not say to themselves, do you know what? Even for 5 minutes of my own back here now, I'm actually just going to go mark him. And so you might even drag a tip back, which if you drag, I don't know, you drag even a Mikey Breen out there for a while, so be it. You're dragging an extra body out there, but there's more room potentially inside.
Listen, that's the antithesis of what Cork are. Cork are, we play our game and let the other team adjust. The only team that Cork really changed their game for was Limerick over the last couple of years. Everybody else, it was scorched earth, and it was attacking with goals. Even against Clare last year, they didn't deviate.
That's true.
From the plan. So it was just, to me, that was a kind of a heavyweight one punch. You give 2 punches, I give two punches back, and who's standing at the end, and that's how close it was last year. So it's hard to change what you do mid flow.
But the other side of it, though, we talk, the sweeper obviously was a massive part of the result, but also, and you were going to show here in a second, the turnovers that Tipp got, and it was pure work rate and desire and hunger to get on the ball and win the ball.
Yeah. So it's and this is something that we called earlier in the year, right? Was the Tipp forwards? I would say they're well above average, as in I would say they're the standard. Before, for me, it was always Limerick's half forward line in terms of work rate, in terms of covering ground, in terms of tackles and physicality. But to me, there's no maybe Andrew Ormond, Jake Morris, and now Sam O'Farrell got in there towards the end of the year, but Tynan was an absolute physical force as well during the year.
Tynan was
here we have. Yeah, he was just Tynan was class, and he was actually very unlucky. The likes of Farrell had such a good year under 20s and progressed on. I put together a few clips here of just the maniacal work rate and how high up the field Tipp were able to put pressure. It was amazing to me. We've got the ball come out short here to I think it's O'Donoghue here, but I've got Christopher Joyce highlighted here. He's got his hand in the air. He's standing in the centre. When his cornerback is moving to the wing, he needs to get out to give him an option. That arrow, he needs to move to the Hogan stand, but he actually stands still. And because of that, O'Donoghue has to try and hit, or it actually fits in this case, sorry. But he has to try and hit down the line, couldn't get it far enough. We've got John McGrath with the block and Morris. So that pressure was just enormous all the way through the game. And so when Cork did go short, you got O'Donoghue, he's looking again. Because of the sweeper, the extra bodies, and the tight man marking, he's still looking. You can see his head up all the time. But John McGrath has left his man and he's got put on a burst of speed, block. And again, ball goes to ground and Tipper fighting for that ball. It was just unreal. And so I know John McGrath gets huge credit for his goal contribution, but it was his work rate around the field that was equally impressive. And it's the kind of player that he is, that all the McGraths are. But here, Morris won a puck out clean. But look, Cork look like they've turned it over. Who's in there? Willie Connors. Unbelievable tackle. Here we have Stakelum, turns his body, gets his steps in, gets close to the goal, puts it over the bar. Great finish. But to me, Connors in there, just absolutely hammering the nail and just no let up. And that was the start of the second half where they really, Tipp were turning the screw. And then when the ball went long, and the ball, there's a messy break here. It looks like Cork's all over this. Look at Jason Ford diving for the ball. And then just the trust that he has. Look at this, completely blind pass. The trust that he has with John McGrath. And these are two boys now have come up through the ranks together, like from 2016 was their year that they came on. So, it's just pure trust and just the willingness to dive on a ball, like to be the one to put your head where you wouldn't put a hurley. Obviously then this reinforces the skill and the hurlers that they are too. But here, Reece Shelley, this was one of the times that he went long and direct. And again, Cork handled this well. So Downey, very, very good, gets the ball down in front of O'Leary. A bit of a mess here, it's a bit of a scramble, but then O'Leary's away. And O'Leary's good in this scenario. Look, he's in good shape here. Who have we got in here? Willie Connors. Willie Connors, again, just getting that physical presence there, getting the hurley across. Unfortunately, the timing was a little bit casual from O'Leary, especially with the numbers around midfield. But look at this, hurley in, ball cut down. He rises the ball, and instead of shooting himself, passing it off to McGrath puts it over. It was just, there's a selflessness about this Tipp forward line that I would have seen before. Noel McGrath, Sheamus Callan, these boys, they were the hallmark of spray the ball around. Whoever is the man in the best position is the man who gets the ball. But I think that this Tipp team are just incredible workers. I mean, just the likes of Dan McCormack in years past would have been given that title of the worker, right? As well as being an excellent hurler. But Jake Morris, Andrew Ormond, Sam O'Farrell were everywhere, and they were putting in tackles. Willie Connors was putting in tackles all over the field, whether he was wing back or midfield. And it was enormous commitment. It's intimidating for Cork because you feel like you're in possession and you're away, and all of a sudden you're turned over and the ball has gone back over the bar at the far side. And every single one of those was more weight on the shoulders, it was more expectation, it was a deeper hole to dig out of, and every one of them was a cut. It was a point of no return for Tipperary.
It was.
You were going to talk to us. Yeah, you were going to talk about the turning point for you.
Yeah, and you're kind of, after saying you're teeing it up really nicely for me, in the sense that you spoke with the half forward line. But in particular, and I had to write this down because when I was watching it over and over again, the point for me was like, when did the game turn and why? I wrote down, and I wrote from the 36 minutes, 39 seconds, Conor Stapleton got the first point for Tipp in the second half. It was just after Hoggy missed a free, so went to throw in. Tim O'Mahony was fouled and he put the ball wide on his own 65. But from then and 9 minutes after, so between the 36 minute and 40 seconds to 9 minutes later, Tipp had scored 1-5, Cork had scored nothing. So it then went from a 1-16 game to 13 at halftime, to a 1-18 to 1-17 game in favour of Tipperary. So a complete turnaround. So I was trying to figure out, well, what happened? There was a couple of things that happened, but for me, there was big fouls that were committed during that period that I felt that the half forward line for Tipp really dominated. Ormer was fouled on 37 minutes. He got a foul, but he hit the ball over the bar himself. Connolly gave away a very silly free on O'Mara, who actually got injured and had to go off afterwards. That was on the 37th minute. Also, there was a free on the 42nd minute where Jake Morris was fouled by Rob. All those fouls drained the life out of Cork. But for me, one player in particular, I felt really drove home the turning point, and that was Andrew Ormond. When he got on the ball in the second half, he was like someone possessed. So if you play centre back, it's an absolute nightmare when you have a forward like this who runs out the field, is happy enough to come back and sit on top of you as a centre back, and runs laterally over and back the field. So he's not happy just to stay in the centre. He will drag you everywhere. So here we can see him. He's highlighted. He's already making the run away from Rob and wants Rob to follow him because he doesn't want him holding the centre. So when the ball goes long on top of Decky Dalton, Willie Connors, as you've already said, was immense. A nice little dunt. Wouldn't say a free. Does brilliant here. Lovely little flick. Ball goes here. But look at this ball. Great ball. He's now pulling your centre-back out of position. He's getting the ball, and more importantly, he's actually taking him on. So when he wins the ball and he gets the ball in his hand, look at this. Boom, I'm taking this fella on here. He wins a free. It was an advantage, but confidence to bang this over the bar. Okay, so that's starting to turn the tide because Cork went in with a goal just before the break, which was probably the worst thing that could have happened. He's saying, I'm going to take this 2 early doors. So again, he's in the same position. Okay, so he's again up with Rob so he doesn't get the puck out. The minute the ball is going long, he is darting out the field, looking to find that gap of space, that when the ball is turned over, that he's there as an option. Okay, so again, sloppy enough play here, kind of works around Jake Morris, again, your other half forward. But look who he finds on the same wing, Andrew Ormond. Now you have a centre-back that's marking no one. He's getting dragged at the field. You have a Conor Stakelum in the middle looking for the ball. Why? Because Cork are now getting dragged because they're trying to follow. Ball is popped. Again, poor hands by Jake, which we don't say that too often. But because he has come so far out the pitch, because he's following the man, the ball goes short. And again, Shelley is cute enough to realise that Cork were out of position. So he bangs, go to Amara, lovely turn. But look at this, bang. Watch this, lovely little slip. And watch who ends up on the end of this. So even though he was out on the left-hand side under the Hogan stand, here he is getting back into position to bang the ball over the bar. And he was an absolute pest for the first 15 minutes of the second half. He was up and down the field. He was over and back. I couldn't imagine marking, to be honest. Again, here's another example. Jake, in fairness, was really well, kind of put in half a block. We can see him highlighted here. So he's already done the disconnection between himself and Rob from the puck out. But he's here now. But if we watch his movement, so when Cork lose possession of the ball is turned over, right? Look at his movement. He knows now that the ball is turned over. Look at him getting the ball. Bang. Turn the ball inside and decides, you know what, I'm taking it on. There's probably a free or two here. But again, poor positioning by John. Well, poor hands by John. Again, we don't say that too often. But watch this as you showed the work rate. But watch when the ball is turned over, flicked around, lovely ball inside. John goes to Dara, and Dara hits it all over the bar. And again, why? It's because Andrew Ormond is causing an absolute wreck inside, that he's dragging the half-back line all over the place. The midfielders don't know whether to stick with him or to follow. And all of a sudden, he's creating so many opportunities inside that Cork are actually forced to go tight into the middle, which allows Tipp then play on either side.
Yeah, and it's probably, so there's two things here, right, for me, is that the Tipp half forward line had that space to operate. When Ormond came off of Downey has to, like, the centre back is not following a fella 65. It's not supposed to happen, right? He has to have the link up with midfield and half forward. The Cork half forward line played so far up the field, and a lot of that was dictated by the fact that they went man to man on puckouts to try and cut out the Tipp short puckout, like they did against Dublin. Yeah. So they suffocated Dublin's short puckout game. But I feel like they played the Dublin game plan against Tipp, which was just, you can't do it. Like, and what ended up happening then was Ormond had the space to operate on. And I feel like it was probably a lack of respect to Tipp's half forward line, and it was probably something that they should have considered. Like if they were playing Keane Lynch at 11, they'd have had a plan. But here.
We're getting very fancy now. Before we say this now, we're getting very fancy. Typical last episode, we decided to bring out this.
Noel, you're just jealous that I can actually.
I know, I'm actually raging.
But the key for me is, right, and I factor in, right, but the two teams, and I mentioned it earlier, they went into halftime in two different positions, and I feel like one recognized, which was Tipperary, that we're doing all the things that we said we would. Our plan is working. Our execution is just letting us down. So all the black arrows on the left-hand side were them shooting into the hill. And you can see all the 9 wides that they had. The only one, with the exception of Owen Connolly's goal chance, which was a right good chance for a full-back to get up the field. But everyone out of them outside were from a difficult, a low percentage shooting position. And a lot of the times they were hit without taking the 4 steps to actually take it further. And I think Liam Cahill said it afterwards. He just said at halftime the message was, let's be brave and let's take it further. Let's get into a better position to increase the percentage of our shot. And I think that was such a good message, right? And for me then on the right-hand side is the first 5 minutes only of the second half where the scores came from. And you showed 3 of them. The first one was Ormond. When he got the ball, he was on between the 265s against Downey. He put his head down and ran at him. And when he was able to run at him, he got the advantage, but he took his extra steps and it was on the 45 and closer to goal when he was actually shooting, better percentage shot, had the advantage, so it was worth a go. The Stakelum one came from the Willie Connors shoulder turnover. And so when Willie gave it to Stakelum, you could see he took 5 steps inside, but he didn't shoot off his left, as you'd expect from the Cusack stand side. He actually turned in on his favoured right to make sure. He said, I'm going to give myself every chance of scoring here. And it was just, he just made sure increased the likelihood of scoring. And then the Darren McCarthy score then for me, and the other Ormond score was Sam Farrell charging in, and the second one then was the ball that you showed where Ormond attacked. The ball broke down with John McGrath, but it was tidied up and back to Dara. And Dara looked for a goal, but had the good sense then to say, you know what, let's take our point and keep going. But this was just, for me, it was a management coaching point that was really well measured and really well communicated, and then really, really, really well done in the first 5 minutes, where the screw was turned, like you said. That 1-5 without reply in the second half was jarring for Cork.
You're also going to show us your turning point as well, eh? Or turning points.
So like this to me, then I find it like it's part of this second half. It's hard to kind of what happened without talking about what might have been. All right. So here's a sideline for Tipperary, right? And here's Connolly. Dara Fitz was game and he was trying all game, right? And so he takes his shot on the back. Rhys Shelley is looking at it, he's checking it. It hits off the post, right? So it hits off the left-hand post. It comes down. This is where I don't know if people were able to see it in the actual broadcast.
But I actually didn't see it.
It bounces on the goal line. Rhys Shelley is looking at this thing in the Hurlers. It bounces on the white line. It then bounces off the bottom of the right post and then comes out. It's wild, right? And that's how close it was. But even then, when you play it on, so Rhys Shelley then takes what could have been a point, what could have been a freak spin of a goal if the ball bounced the wrong way into net. So Shelley comes out, he passes to Ronan Maher. Ronan Maher then, this is key for me, like look, he looks, the right ball is the best ball, and he plays the super ball over to Morris. I know Joyce is in good position here, but I'd expect Morris to score here, and he puts in a great shot. Look how high this ball is over the crossbar. If the shot doesn't come off the post and away the far end, I don't think Collins is as desperate here to keep this down, because it's a bad decision, because it's a meter over the crossbar, and it comes down. The composure of John McGrath is immense, but that decision by Collins isn't made if the situation at the far end of the field hadn't immediately transpired. And so instead of having Cork come back within a point, Tipp are after going down the field, and instead of Tipp getting a point, they're after getting 3, and so you're nearly at a 4 or 5 point swing at that stage. And it was just such a critical time in the game where I know Tipperary had the momentum at that stage, but it was a mistake, and that then just really ate into the Cork psyche. Here we have a puck out from Collins, then great break to Fitz, and again he's going at him. So he's got 2 options here. When he's in the ball, he can come back at this point, or he can stay running. But look, if he stays running, the number of Tipp jerseys that are in. There was 9 Tipperary men inside the 45. When he puts the ball across, it's all blue. It's all blue jerseys. Hoggy's even in the wrong spot. Hoggy got caught in the D instead of making a beeline for the back post. And then Connolly, I think he's just had such a good year. He comes out with a great touch by Barrett to get it done. Bit of a mess here, but our boy Willie comes in again and he saves the day. Connors gets it out. Looking for a flick back to Breen. Flick back to Breen, right? So then Breen has his head up like Ronan, sees the only option is long at John. And this is art, right? If you're a full forward, right, this is art. John nudges Downey. So Owen is after playing him from the front, which is a risky thing to do as a fullback, right? But the nudge on the back, catch on the turn. And Downey doesn't even, he's blind because his man is behind him. He's off balance. and he doesn't even know. Like, so that foul is as much just trying to get his feet back right as much as poor tackling. And you pointed out, Noel, that tackle started outside the box, but whether it was a penalty or not. But like the reality is,
I think that John played here now. Look at that hand over the shoulder.
Yeah. But it is like it's art. Like it's incredible full forward play. Just the nudge, the timing, the catch on the turn, and Downey had no chance. And for a 19-year-old in All-Ireland final to tell Jason Ford, no, I'm taking it. That's brave. Like, that's brave for McCarthy. But unfortunately, again, like, it's just what could have been at the far end. Fitz attacks the Tipp defense with a run that he has scored from so many times this year, last year. He's one of the most dangerous players in the country when he's on the ball. And instead of that ball across getting to a Cork end, the timing, the runs were off. The Tipp jerseys were there, flooding the back, up the field in one movement and a goal. It's like, they're massive, massive swings. So you'd wonder then, people are like, oh, how did Cork freeze? When things like that, when you get haymakers like that are so circumstantial, it's very, very hard to recover from a lot of things. You really need enormous grit and leadership to just even settle after moments like that. It's really, really hard.
So you're after mentioning him a few times in your clips. Let's name young hurler and hurler of the year for you. For me, I'll go first, as I said it. Adam English, young hurler of the year, Limerick. This is maybe a left of field, right? But I felt the latter stage of this year, he was incredible, as Willie Connors. No relation, by the way. No relation.
I said that was my first question. You beat me by half a second. I was like, this is definitely a Connors club.
No.
You're entitled to the but like, in terms of impact, I think he'd such a huge impact in both the quarterfinal, semi-final, that, you know, it's justifiable. But for me, the young hurler, Adam was superb, and I would say that he really was excellent. Sam O'Farrell had an excellent finish to the year, like, talking about winning All-Ireland 20s and All-Ireland senior in the same year. Like, it's fairy tale stuff.
It mightn't have been the case when Bertine got pulled his hamstring against Clare up in Ennis. So,
but that's how I got into the starting team in Limerick. Was somebody got hurt. I don't know how you got into the team. Maybe your talent got you there.
I just height advantage.
Yeah. So, but like, O'Farrell had a super year. McCarthy was immense, right? I watched the game 3 times, and each time I watched it, he was incredibly composed, and the depth in the field. He wasn't typically used to working back as far as he worked on Sunday. He was immense. Now, he was responding to the semi-final where he could have cost his team. So it was, for me, it was great maturity that he faced into the challenge of the All-Ireland final the way he did. He had a great year. You know, he had the freeze, but, you know, in general play, he was a handful. But for me, yeah, Adam English was absolute nightmare. Whether he was from that goal against Tipperary, where he just walked up and touched it between the legs, like, it was just of Hogan. It was just amazing. But for hurler of the year, right, this was less straightforward for me. Brian Hayes, for me, was on track. Brian Hayes, bar the All-Ireland final, was the best player in the country. I thought he was absolutely unbelievable. I thought that everything that Cork did well, and you could see the dependence on him when Ronan Maher actually held him in check. When Ronan Maher held him in check, and when they targeted him as much as they did without route, it showed you how important he was. And he would have been my hurler of the year prior to the final. Ronan Maher was another shout for me. I thought he was absolutely incredible. I thought he was so good. Mossy Keown, I thought he had an incredible year. He was brilliant, and this is Mossy getting better year on year. I thought this was another year where, you know, even in the semi-final against Tipperary, what had he, 6 points from play, 5 points from play, and he scored goals for fun.
Breen as well. Like, Breen has been brilliant all year.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, he was. That's right. So, like, he was on like one of Tipp's best and most seasoned players. So, yeah, no. When it does boil down to it, though, if you ask me to name a hurler of the year, I probably would go with Jake Morris. He was the driving force for him in the Munster Championship. He was he's added so much steel to his game, like the pure hurling and the high expectations that followed him when he joined the club, or when he joined the senior team from the Nina Road Club, and just the hype around him. He's grown into that leader for Tipperary. And when Darragh McCarthy got sent off against Kilkenny, the first score that came after that absolute, punch to the face that Tipperary took was Morris to settle the charges and to lead the way. And then on Sunday, it was his work rate and it was his movement, and that was him. And I think for me, then that's Hurler year stuff.
So we're kind of coming to touching on nearly an hour of content here now. So I'm very.
It's the All-Ireland final, only.
Yeah, I know, and this is probably like less interesting, but we seen on Twitter, I think the platform was, which you're not on, when I think it was on YouTube, maybe, when it was tagged about Sheamus and the Green Machine or something like that. They tagged, I think, was it Sheamus the wrestler in WWE or whatever it's referred to now.
AI thinks that I'm a ginger WWE wrestler, apparently.
So he's agreed apparently to fight you in Croke Park. So he said make it happen. So the general public want to know, when does this happen?
I'm for it. Like he's got nothing on me except 50 kilos, 60 kilos, and incredible athleticism. But I'll take it. I'll go for it.
But he doesn't have great dress sense. Show everyone your lovely tie. Show everyone your lovely. Put down the show us your tie. Show your lovely tie. Sheamus does it every week, by the way. That he has lovely clothes underneath. He's far more attractive.
Fancy guy.
Yeah. Yes. So again, just to wrap it up, your Hurler of the Year is Jake Morris. Your Young Hurler of the Year is Adam English. My Young Hurler of the Year is Adam English. My Hurler of the Year, as I said, is Willie Connors. Maybe left of centre, but I think what he does for the Tipp team, he makes them tick. He goes midfield, he goes back. Yeah, he can give me €50 if he wants. Whatever he wants to give me, that's fine. But with that in mind, listen, it's been a really enjoyable 11 weeks. I hope that it's been reasonably enjoyable and people have learned something, and we've definitely learned things from each other. So after 11 weeks, this is our last show, and hopefully we will see you next year. But that's up to Collie, our producer. But from myself, and Sheamus will probably thank Evan as well, from myself, thanks to Sheamus in particular, to Collie, our head of production, who does Trojan work, even though we give out to him quite a lot and laugh and joke and send him stuff last minute. He does Trojan work. Annie Smith has also helped out over the last couple of weeks. So huge thanks to both of those guys that do the work and make it look like that we know what we're really talking about. Yeah. So myself, thanks Sheamus and everyone.
Love talking Hurling, Noel. Love talking with you. It's been a great championship, and we said it was open at the beginning of the year, and lo and behold, we've got our third different winner in 3 years.
All from Munster. Up Munster.
All from Munster, yeah. Richie Hogan, I was already furiously flipping.
Yeah. The last Leinster winner was 2017 when Galway went us. I think that's right, yeah. So listen, from Sheamus myself, thanks very much, and hopefully we'll see you in 2026. Thanks a million.
On.